Because I care about the cut-ups, thank you. Which good team or teams are one injury away from a disaster season? Some of you thought that this was glorifying or predicting injury. It's not. It's just a depth chart question. I came up with 4 of them. Number 1, the Florida Gators. If Anthony Richardson goes down, their season goes down. I think some of you are, if you follow the program, probably yelling at your phone or you're yelling at your computer right now. We got Jack Miller. I know you do. I said what I said. So if that leads you to believe I don't believe in Jack Miller, then you wouldn't be too far from reality. No, he hasn't shown me anything, or I haven't heard anything about Jack Miller that would lead me to believe that Ohio State transfer is ready to seamlessly pick up the baton if Anthony Richardson drops it down there. They are going to have to lean so heavily on quarterback. And I mean more than other programs. They do not, like I said about 15 minutes ago, have the supporting cast around the quarterback position this year like you need to take over games unless the quarterback is an alpha type that can take over games. Richardson is that. No one else on that roster is. Florida badly needs him. Number 2, just watched him in action yesterday. Oklahoma quarterback Dillon Gabriel. Oklahoma, suffice it to say, needs him to stay healthy. This is what happens when you miss out in the transfer portal. They were in it for Jackson Dart. Dart ends up going to Ole Miss. They need Dillon Gabriel to stay healthy. And it just kind of is what it is. It's a new staff, so it is what it is. But the proper perspective here is not, I think, to look and say, man, we don't have much behind him at quarterback. The proper perspective, knowing how you got Dillon Gabriel, is saying, wow, what would happen if he wasn't here? Because remember, that cat was at UCF and transferred to UCLA for, I think, like 13 and a half minutes, and then reportaled, which is a new term, to Norman. If he wasn't there and you missed out on Dart, maybe you wouldn't have missed out on Dart if he wasn't there. But boy, if Dillon Gabriel wasn't here, it'd be a much different tune they were singing out in Oklahoma yesterday. What about Clemson? It's not the quarterback position. I went with the wide receiver position. You could say Ngata, you could say Joseph Ngata, but I said wide receiver position in general. Because last year, if you opened up the Clemson toolbox, in a toolbox, you're supposed to have a bunch of tools. It just felt like they had 19 hammers. I went to the Georgia game, walking around on the field pregame, and I'm watching their wide receivers warm up. And every one of them are like 6'3", 210 pounds. They're just all the same. They're immensely impressive to look at physically. The problem is not a one of them could get open because they all are the same. They look the same. They run the same. There's no versatility in the room. It's nothing like the rooms of 2015, 16, 17, 18. It's not that. It wasn't that last year. I strongly question whether it will be this year, but they certainly can't afford injury. That's something Dabo talked about in the spring. They're a work in progress at that receiver. You know, they always talk about the next Hunter Renfrow up there. And it's going to be that way for a long time. Clemson's not the only program that does that. But Brandon Spector is a guy who they're asking right now whether he's the next Hunter Renfrow. I'm going to give you a short answer. I don't think he is, only because if I dropped Hunter Renfrow on this team, I don't quite think Hunter Renfrow could do statistically what he did back in the day. He'd still be good. I understand that. But Hunter Renfrow worked off a lot of the other talent in that receiver room. Talent the likes of which they don't really have on this team right now. And so, having said that, they certainly can't afford any injury in that room. And lastly, what about Notre Dame? Tyler Buckner is already hurt. That's why he had to miss the spring game yesterday. He twisted his ankle on stairs. Install ramps. Take my advice. Just install the ramps. But if he were to go down, essentially you would get what you saw in Notre Dame's spring game yesterday. I didn't really talk a whole lot about it because it wasn't much to write home about because the starting quarterback wasn't able to play. Drew Pine is a serviceable backup. He is not, in my estimation, a high-level Power 5 caliber quarterback. And so absent Tyler Buckner, and it's not that he's a guaranteed commodity this year, there's a lot of high hope for him, but absent him, Notre Dame goes from being a team that could be a fringe contender if everything fell right to being a team that's looking at an 8-win season, probably max. So those are some of the programs I circled. You could go to Arkansas and KJ Jefferson. I do not think Alabama fits this description because I think if Bryce Young were to retire from football today, Jalen Milroe could probably lead them to the SEC championship game. That's how good I think the quarterback situation is right now, and how good I think his surrounding and supporting cast is, and how good I think their pass rush will be this year. I don't think Bama's going to need 40 plus every game to win. I'll put it to you that way.